The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
These are violent criminals, so they're not going to go down easy.
ABC Tuesdays.
Let's get this done.
The Rookie is back.
We have 2 new rookies starting today.
Howdy.
Being a cop is stressful 24/7.
Every year on the job is different.
And Training Day
We have a serial killer at large.
never ends.
We need an ambulance!
The Rookie. All new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Amateur Traveler, episode 918. Today, Amateur Traveler talks about live oaks and stingrays, forts and middens, trains and the Underground Railroad, and ghosts as we go to Savannah, Georgia. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler. Let's talk about Georgia. I'd like to welcome the show Yvonne Johnson from Savannah, Georgia, who has come to talk to us about Savannah. Yvonne, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And you are not originally from Savannah, but you have been there for a while.
Yeah, I'm from Sioux City, Iowa, and I moved here about 30 years ago. I'm a professional musician, and I play the viola in the Savannah Philharmonic, and so I moved down here for my career.
Oh, wonderful. I haven't been to Savannah, so you're going to be the expert here. I have been to Sioux City, but we're not talking about that today. So why should someone go to Savannah?
Savannah is just this perfect mix of there's beautiful weather if you come at the right time, and there's great history, and there's great restaurants, and there's just so much to do. And I've raised my children here, and I have guests all the time, and I love entertaining here.
Excellent. What itinerary are you going to recommend for us?
Okay, I would start out with choosing a shoulder season for your visit. That's pretty crucial because the heat can be pretty tough here. So I would choose late October or early November. It's cooling down then. Or you could choose late February, early March. The thing, if you choose the spring seasons, you're going to get the azaleas, and that's really beautiful. But the fall is a lovely time too. And
the fall would overlap with hurricane season, which, as we've seen this year, you just never know. I've certainly traveled to the south in hurricane season and been lucky, but on the other hand, you never know.
Yeah, that's something to consider too. Yeah. And another thing I would do in advance, besides planning the time of your visit, I would be sure and rent a vacation home in advance. Don't wait till you get here.
Okay.
And I would look not necessarily in the historic district or Tybee. I would rent a home out in a residential neighborhood, maybe Midtown or South Side. It's quiet and it's nice to get away from the busyness during the day.
Okay. And you'd recommend that over a local hotel?
Yeah, that'd be better. And then I would fly into the Savannah Hilton Head International Airport. We have a beautiful airport. There's a lot of direct flights from Atlanta, and then we have flights that come right into Savannah. Right when you walk into the airport, they've built a pseudo square to imitate downtown, and it's really
that's funny.
It's nice, yeah. And then I would rent a car for sure and immediately download the Savannah Parking app. It's easy to use, and it's great. You can add time. And then when you're in the historic district, the downtown, you can park a couple blocks away and then walk. And you can always find parking on the outer edges. And then your walk is through beautiful areas. So that's the best way there.
Okay.
And then day one, I would get on the Old Town Trolley Tour. Those are those orange trolleys in a lot of other cities. And it's just a nice way to rest from your trip and have someone else give you the overview of Savannah. There's a lot of interesting things, and they have great stories. And then it's interesting because you'll be on the east side of the historic district and you'll see the houses from the 1700s. And then as they move west, they become more 1800s, late 1800s. And it's really interesting to see the architectural timeline there. If you have a lot of energy and you don't want to sit on a trolley, you could go to the Savannah Museum, which is in the former Central of Georgia Railway Station. And that's a really nice museum that kind of does the same thing, but you can look at the exhibits yourself. We've had a lot of movies filmed here. So they have the park bench from Forrest Gump in the museum. And then they have the Bird Girl statue from Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. So it's a good museum too.
Okay.
And then just a little ways down the street is the Savannah Railroad Museum, which is really, that's a highlight. I have a son who was really into railroads when he was young. And
that's the Georgia State Railroad Museum?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah. And they have one of the few roundhouses that still functions, and you can get on their engine and move around in a circle like with a roundhouse, and it's a lot of fun. They also have an amazing miniature train display that actually functions, and there's a children's museum just right outside the railroad part, and with a lot of costumes and a maze, and kids love the children's museum there too.
Cool.
And then keep walking down Martin Luther King Street to the Ships of the Sea Museum.
Okay.
This is a really interesting museum. It was the William Scarborough Mansion in the 1800s, and then they turned it into a elementary school for African-American children. And now it's this beautiful museum, very air-conditioned. If you've had a hot day, you just escape in there, and the lighting is really subtle. And they have many ship models, miniature ship models, but all through the American history. And then they have maritime antiques, a lot of paintings. And then there's gardens outside where the Savannah Jazz Festival hosts concerts, and also the Savannah Music Festival hosts concerts. And it's a lovely area. So after all that, I would wrap up your first day at our local cafe called Carrie Hilliard's. They have a couple of these cafes around town, and hopefully you're staying in a neighborhood that you can be close to one. They have really great barbecue. They're famous for their barbecue sauce, and they have crab and shrimp. And then they have award-winning sweet tea, and it's very sweet. So you can ask the waiter to bring you 2 pitchers, one sweet and one unsweet, and then they'll simultaneously pour them into a cup, and it's delicious. Yeah, it's good.
You say barbecue sauce. What kind of barbecue sauce am I getting in Savannah? Are we in the mustard sauce, the white sauce, the red sauce?
It's more mustardy. Yeah.
Okay.
Mustardy,
I am in that region. All right.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So then your second day, I would start over by Forsyth Park, which is on the edge of our historic district. And there's a really cute coffee shop. It's called the Sentient Bean, and it reminds you of somebody from the 1970s with interesting art on the wall and grungy, but it's really lovely. And it's right on the edge of Forsyth Park, and that's our city park. And it's a 30-acre park, and there's a huge fountain in the middle of it, and it's modeled after the fountain in Place de la Concorde in Paris. And it's gorgeous. They put green dye in it for St. Patrick's Day, and the whole thing turns green. We're the second largest St. Patrick's Day festival in the country after Boston. So
okay.
And this park is a beautiful park. It's designed by Frederick Olmsted. He's the landscape architect who did Central Park in New York City. And it's gorgeous with live oaks and moss. And there's a large Confederate memorial in one area. And on Confederate Memorial Day in April, they have these women who dress up as widows from the 19th century, and they do a march around it. And if you're from not this area, it's really something to see. I would continue walking.
A separate Confederate Memorial Day.
Yeah, I did not know that either, but it happens down here. And then I would continue walking through the center of the park, and there's a lot of weddings. In fact, we had our own wedding reception right by that fountain. It's just gorgeous. And you'll walk through to the edge of the park, and then you're going to start walking down Bull Street. And this is a great street. I always take friends and tourists here. We start from Forsyth Park and walk all the way through the historic district down to Savannah River. And it's great sights. So that's what we're going to do on this day 2.
Okay.
And the first thing on your left is a mansion called the Armstrong House. And it was the beginning of our Armstrong College. But now Richard Kessler, who started Days Inn, he has purchased it and refinished it. And he's a wonderful collector of large sculptures. So you'll look through this wrought iron gate and his yard is full of these amazing sculptures. And it's beautiful. I'll talk about him more later. He's done some great things in Savannah. Okay. So then you keep walking down Bull Street, and then you're going to look to your right, and it's Temple Mikveh Israel. It's one of the oldest Jewish congregations in America. It was organized in 1735, which is pretty old for the United States. And they have a wonderful artifact museum that contains 2 of the oldest Torah scrolls in North America. And a lot of historical letters and items. That's a great stop. And then you're going to go a couple more blocks to the Griffin Tea Room. And this is an apothecary from the 19th century. And SCAD, our Savannah College of Art and Design, has purchased it and redone it. They have a historical preservation department. You can still see the shelves where they would have the medicines for an old drugstore. But they've turned it into a tea room, so you can have high tea there. It's lovely. And then right across from that, SCAD also bought that building, and it was our armory. And they have turned it into a 4D presentation of the beginning of SCAD, because this woman, Paula Wallace.
4D presentation.
Yeah, so you can feel things, hear things, see things.
Okay, all right. I wonder what the 4th D that was there. All right.
Yeah. They have a film production department at SCAD, and this is just really great. You wouldn't think the starting of a college would be a something you'd want to see, but it's really something. And so Paula Wallace came down from Atlanta and started this school department by department. And it's really interesting. You've got to admire people like that. And then right outside of that, there's a gift shop with items that students have made and faculty. And you can, they have visual arts, architecture, fashion, film departments, all that. Okay. And then you're going to keep going down Bull. At this point, you're going to take a little detour 2 blocks west to our other big religious. There's so many churches, but this is a big one, the St. John's Cathedral. This was formed in 1799 from French noble families that were escaping Haiti because of the slave revolt. They came up to Savannah and they started this Catholic congregation. And this is just a gorgeous cathedral. It's not Europe, but it's really great. It's marble everywhere, marble altars, amazing stained glass windows, fabulous organ, and it's huge. And that's a lovely one. Then you're going to keep on going down Bull Street. There are 2 bookstores that you just can't miss, even if you don't like books. They're really interesting. The first one is Esther Shaver. And this is one of those old stores you go in and then you go in a little room and it keeps trailing back and there's no end to it, and just books everywhere, and they let cats wander around, and it's a really interesting place. And then across the street from that is called the Book Lady. And this is a secondhand and new bookstore. And she's on her own there, and she brings in poets to do readings. And it's more of a casual one than Esther Shaver, with towering piles of books and chairs everywhere. And that's a great place to hang out.
I was still trying to get over even if you don't like books, I was just trying to fathom that, but okay.
For people, can you imagine?
I've heard that.
And then just beyond that, there's a really great coffee shop called Gallery Espresso. And they have baked goods, coffees, and everything. And then they have antique tea sets that you can purchase or just look at on display, and antiques. And just, there's so many places on this route through Bull Street where you just want to stop and visit and look around. And then there's, just beyond that, there's a chocolate shop called Chocolat by Adam Taroni. This is a true artisan who moved here, I would say, about 10 years ago. And he has a shop on Bull Street. And it's arranged as a library. So you have volumes of books, and then between the books, there's a little tray of these incredible chocolates made with gold leaf or some interesting combination of ingredients. And it's not just chocolate, it's the display and everything. And then in the back, he has a glassed-in kitchen, so you can watch him make these. And it's a great shop. And then keep going a little more down Bull Street, and there's a Japanese ice creamery called Doki Doki. And this just opened a few months ago, but they're very popular. And they're just really clever. Like they have Fruity Pebble flavored ice cream
Okay.
and then Ferrero Rocher gelato, those hazelnut chocolates. They've made a gelato that flavor, and it's great. So you'll keep going down Bull Street, and I didn't mention you'll see these beautiful historic townhouses on either side of you, and it's along with these shops, and it's just very picturesque. You'll dead end on Bay Street eventually, and then you're going to cross Bay Street very carefully. It's a very busy street. And then you'll have really steep stairs. It's like the Great Wall in China, those kind of stairs with different heights. And you're going to take these down to River Street. So you're going down the bluff to the bottom there. And you're going to see cotton warehouses, brick cotton warehouses on either side of you, stretching very far. And they're no longer
right. Sure.
Ended around the mid 1950s. And they fell into disrepair. And then in the 1970s, we had a really good mayor who got a bunch of people together and they restored these cotton warehouses. So now they're shops and restaurants and hotels. It's not completely commercial. You can still see the original warehouses. So
okay.
Tourists and locals, everybody loves to walk along River Street because you'll see these huge ships and the river is not that big. And these ships are just filled with shipping containers from all over the world. And they're very close to the edges. It's a very narrow river. And so Savannah is the second busiest port on the eastern coast. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And the third busiest in the United States. So there's a lot of ships all the time coming by. And like I said, there's a lot of shops and restaurants on this street, but there's just a couple I take people to. One of them is the Savannah Candy Kitchen, famous for the pralines, and they always have free samples at the door, so that's wonderful. Then there's Gallery 209, which is a collection of local artists who do jewelry, oil painting, photography, sculpture. And if you can imagine, Savannah's so beautiful, the paintings and the photos of Savannah, people always want to take something home. It's just, it's a gorgeous sight. And then True Grits is a great antique store. It's very big, and they have any kind of souvenir that you'd want from Savannah. So keep walking down River Street, head east, and it dead ends into something called Plant Riverside. Now, I mentioned Richard Kessler with the mansion near Forsyth Park. He bought our former power plant. It was a huge power plant, and he turned it into a Marriott Hotel, several restaurants, a recital hall, some little boutiques and shops, and it's huge. And then also he has a collection of dinosaur bones. He's a geologist of kind, so he'll have these massive rocks in the lobby of the hotel and dinosaur bones hanging from the ceiling. And it's really interesting just to walk through, even if you're not staying there or having something to eat. It's a beautiful place to walk through. I would end this day, get back in your car, and drive to a quieter part of Savannah. It's a local buffet called Old Country Buffet. And this is a Southern Georgia restaurant. You walk in and there are bins of tomatoes and potatoes on the side, and you feel like you're walking into a farmer's market or something. But it's a huge buffet, and there's a area just vegetables cooked Southern style, any kind of vegetable you would want, and then meats and desserts. And
now you say cooked Southern style. I'm aware of like Southern style vegetables like okra and things that I don't normally eat. But what is cooked Southern style?
There's usually,
I want to say fried, but
no, cooked for a long time with like ham and pork bones and stuff. So it's flavored with meat, but it's actually a vegetable.
It may not be vegetarian, but it is a vegetable. Okay.
And a lot of different kinds of greens, cabbage and
collard
not kale,
greens,
but greens, collard greens, a lot of collard greens. Yeah, like that. So.
Ah, bon chien. Bonjour, je suis Theo, a tour leader with Explore. And this is Punti. He's helping us find truffles under the trees next to this beautiful vineyard. Maybe for tomorrow's cooking class? We call it semi-heure. Parfait. Semi-o'clock. Not everyone gets to enjoy a Bordeaux sunset this way, but you will if you explore. No, Punti. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel. Explore.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Great. So now day 3, you're going to drive out to Tybee Island. You drive along this long, beautiful, it's just a road between, obviously it's an island, but it's just this narrow road.
Causeway.
The causeway, yeah. And certain sides are covered with crepe myrtles. I don't know if you know, they're hot pink flowers, and that's really beautiful looking across the marsh. And
now, is that something I'm going to see more in spring? The crepe myrtle in bloom?
Yeah, those are spring through the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, those are beautiful. Yeah. And you'll start out in the North Beach. That's on your left, and you're going to see the lighthouse. And I would drive over there, and it's worth climbing up the 178 steps because it sounds like a lot, but it's really not bad. Just get up there and get all the way to the top and look around. It's beautiful. And then right next door is the Tybee Island Marine Science Center. And that's new. That just opened in the past 5 years, but they've done a great job. There's a petting zoo no matter your age. It's nice to pet a stingray and a turtle and all the different things. They did a great job. And then if you go on the second floor of that, there's an observatory deck, and you can look out and you'll see all the ships heading towards Savannah, and then look over on the beach. And that's beautiful. And then right near the Marine Science Center is our Fort Screven. And that was built in 1897 for the Spanish-American War. And it was an active fort until 1945. The Navy used it during World War II as a diving school for soldiers that did the beach invasions in France. And then a couple blocks away is the Thai Bean. It's our coffee shop out there, and they have great lavender-infused drinks and great place to relax and have a coffee. And then next door to them is a place called Huckapoo's, and they have the huge pieces of pizza for $5, and that's a really fun place to go. And then in that same little area, there's some shops, and there's one called Latitude 52, which is cute because Tybee is on a globe. It's Latitude 52, so you can get a t-shirt that says that.
Got it.
That's fun. And then get back on Highway 80 and circle around the island, and you're going towards the pier. And as you turn to go towards the pier, there's a shop right on the ocean called T.S. Chus, C-H-U-S, and it's a historic general store. It was started by one of the first Chinese immigrant families in the area. And it's one of those general stores with everything you might not need and everything you do need. It's a great place. It's a funny place. And then you're right at the pier, so walk all the way out, and you're going to see people catching sharks and stingrays and just people who stand out there all the time just fishing. So then after the pier, there's a restaurant right next to the pier called Spanky's, and that's a local place, famous chicken fingers. That's a really great place you could take your chicken fingers and actually just go sit out on the beach and look at the water. Then I would hop back in the car and go around to the back side of the island. So then that's just a river. And there's a really great restaurant there called AJ's with local shrimp. And you can also rent a paddleboard or a kayak there to go around on the creeks and the river. That's a lovely place. Then the next day, I would walk down Broughton Street. And Broughton Street is our downtown. And it has become more
So
developed.
Now I'm back in Savannah?
Yeah, go back in Savannah for day 4. Yeah.
And before we do that, we just should say that so Tybee Island here is really at the mouth of the Savannah River, is where you took us to, and separated from the mainland by, looks like, mostly marsh.
Yeah. It's not a serious distance or anything, like
Okay.
20, 30 minutes max. Yeah, it's really close.
Got it. So now I'm back in Savannah.
Yeah. So let's walk down Broughton Street.
Okay.
And there's city buildings, of course, but then we also have a lot of nice boutiques and restaurants. We could start they have another branch of the Savannah Candy Kitchen, so get more pralines. You never have enough when you're down here. They're so good. And then there's a place called Globe Shoes, which is your old-fashioned shoe store where they actually sit down and help you buy a pair of shoes. And they're beautiful, fancy brands and designer shoes. And then there's the Kayak Cafe, another local place with wonderful salads, great ingredients. And then Bird Cookie Company. That's a real local place. They have like quarter-sized little cookies, chocolate chip, oatmeal, and you buy them in these big bags, but they're really tiny, so you don't feel so bad eating a lot of them. They're really good. And then there's the Paris Market. It's 3 floors of just everything you could imagine, like linens, Parisian linens and Parisian glassware, dishes. They have, of course, macarons for sale downstairs. That's a lovely place. And then Foxy Loxy is a really eclectic coffee shop. They have this combination of tacos, kolaches, and coffee drinks, and it's a great place to hang out. Yep. And then there's 2 theaters on Broughton Street. I have to mention they're old theaters, but they've been redone. The Lucas Theater is the home for our professional orchestra, Savannah Philharmonic. And then the Trustees Theater, they're both owned by SCAD and operated by SCAD. But Trustees Theater is the home of our SCAD Film Festival. So for a week in August, you get all these Hollywood super famous people promoting their movies and talking to the students about film development and careers. And they actually have a red carpet on Broughton Street. And it's really great because then the locals can go to movies for $5. And that's great. This day, I think you should end with a haunted tour. Now, Savannah is supposedly the most haunted city in the United States. And I've tried all of these because my kids, especially my daughter, loves this haunted house stuff. You can do it on foot, you can do it by hearse, or you could do it by trolley. And one of her birthday parties was the ghost tour on a hearse. But the one on foot is, I think, the most scary because the tour guides, and they're all good. You can get recommendations, but if you just Google Savannah Haunted Tour and then a bunch will pop up. The ones on foot, you'll be walking down, and it's always at night, of course. You'll be walking down a street and they'll say, "Oh, this B&B. I just talked to the waiter last week and he said such and such happened in somebody's certain room." And to just know this stuff happened last week or even last month, and then you're walking by and it's great. Yeah.
And now I'll have to say, for those of you who've heard the episode we did on Charleston, I take all these things with a grain of salt. Actually, it may not have been that episode, but somebody from Charleston who used to work in I think it was in a hotel, and said they were encouraged to make up stories. Anyway, it's all about the entertainment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So then on day 5, I would hop in your car, and hopefully it's a Thursday on day 5. And then we have this wonderful bakery. If you head south and east of Savannah, not too far, but just that direction, it's called Auspicious Bakery. They're only open Thursday to Sunday, but those croissants outside of Paris, these are the best, really. And just down the street from that, down the road, I would say it's not really a street, is our National Wormslow Historic Site. And this is famous because there's an avenue of live oaks with the Spanish moss all the way down. You can't even see the end of the avenue. It's so long. But the traffic has started to make the trees deteriorate. So now you can park out on the road and then you take a tram down this avenue of oaks, and it's just gorgeous. The avenue dead ends at a wonderful museum, and it talks about this is our oldest structure in Savannah, and it was a man named Noble Jones. He was one of our early settlers, and he built this house out of tabby, which is, you'll see this downtown. It's a mix of concrete and seashells, and people use it for sidewalks.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen it in Jacksonville.
Okay. Yeah. And then there's a lot of trails around this area that are really great. And the ones that go up to creeks, you'll see middens, which are those piles of oyster shells from ancient Native American settlements. Then they're still there, and you can see them. Those are great. And then this day, I would choose either Old Fort Jackson or Fort Pulaski. Both of them were built in the early 1800s, and both were used mainly in the Civil War. But then Fort Pulaski was used a little bit longer, and Fort Pulaski was a Confederate soldier prisoner of war camp also. They're great to walk around. You can walk around on the top, and then outside they both have moats. Day 6, I would go downtown again, but start more on the west side. There's a great coffee shop called the Origin Coffee Shop on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Then you're going to walk a few blocks south to the Ralph Gilbert Civil Rights Museum. This is like Ships of the Sea. People don't go to these places, but they're really fabulous. The tour guides at Ralph Gilbert are just so informative. And I think often they have experienced the things they're talking about, and it just makes it amazing. They have artifacts from the Jim Crow era, like right through Savannah, like the basketball courts at Forsyth Park were just integrated in the 1970s, things like in recent history. They have a rebuilt lunchroom from Levy's department store, which that was a big scene for some integration era.
Sure.
Yeah. And there's a lot of civil rights history in that museum. Right down the street is a great Cuban restaurant called Rancho Allegra. They have great roast pork, rice and beans, and the jazz on the weekends. And then a couple blocks down from that is our First African Baptist Church. This one was built in the mid-1700s by slaves, and it served as a stop in the Underground Railroad. You can still see the air holes in the floor when people were hiding underneath. And that's on the National Historic Register, that church. Very historic. A couple blocks down from that, we're still on MLK. A couple blocks down from that is the Lulu's Chocolate Bar. This is great to go. Great place. Every kind of dessert, chocolate, fruit, baked, cold, anything, plus a cocktail menu. So it's just desserts and cocktails. It's wonderful. And then right after Lulu's, it's the beginning of City Market. And this is where is actually back when Savannah was more rural, the farmers would bring all their things. And they've turned it into a walking street. And at the beginning of City Market, there's a monument to all the Haitian soldiers who came up and fought during the Revolutionary War to defend Savannah.
This is a story I have not heard.
Yeah, it's a beautiful monument. Yeah, actually, over by the Railroad Museum, you can still see they've done some trench reenactment and things like that for that too. Let's see. Across the street from the Haitian Memorial is Vinny's Pizza, which is our New York style pizza shop, unforgettable, always a line. And then right down from that, there's a 2-story collection of art studios with some beautiful paintings, sculptures. There's a famous sculptor in there, Susan Chisholm, and she has done some beautiful large works. You really need to see those. Then day 7, I would start back on the south side of Savannah with a good breakfast at Locke's Chicken and Waffles. This is owned by some Vietnamese immigrants. And even if they do chicken fingers or chicken salad, they marinate the chicken in this amazing marinade, soy sauce, oyster sauce, garlic, and onion. And it's just, everything tastes great there. Then from where you are, I would drive down Ferguson Avenue. That's right outside of Locke's. Drive down Ferguson Avenue. This is just a regular residential street, but it has those live oaks with the Spanish moss hanging down.
Right.
Then you're going to pass Bethesda Boys Home, which is the first orphanage in the United States. That's on your left. You can drive through the campus. There's a brick entryway, and John Wesley was really instrumental in starting that. It's
so
right
it
out.
Is still active, is what I'm hearing you say there.
It's not an orphanage anymore, but it's a really good boys' school for kids who need some help.
Okay.
Financially and behavior-wise, but it's a beautiful place. And then as you keep on heading down that way, you're going to hit Pinpoint, Georgia, which is a former slave community. And there was an oyster and crab canning factory there for many years. And the Coastal Georgia Historical Society has turned this into a museum. And they have great guides that take you through this whole canning process. And it's right on the marsh. It's a beautiful place. Really good tour guides. Then you're going to.
My understanding is this is also known for the Gullah speaking community.
And Clarence Thomas actually grew up there. That's where he's from, Pinpoint, Georgia. Yep. And then you're going to continue past Pinpoint. You're on a marsh. You're going to go over the Moon River. It was named that after Johnny Mercer made that song, Moon River, Breakfast at Tiffany's, but we have our Moon River. And then you're going to hit Skidway State Park on your left. That is a beautiful park. And it has these trails that you can take boardwalks or you can walk on the dirt, and they have a lookout tower. And then there's part of the trail you will pass stills from the Prohibition era that made moonshine, and they're just sunk into the ground and you can see the top of them. And then there's Civil War trenches out there. And then there's also the midden piles of the shells from the
Native Americans.
Native American cultures. Yeah. There's all kinds of things to see. And it's just a state park, and you just come upon these things. It's great. And that would take you a week to get through in Savannah.
Excellent. What else should people know before they come to Savannah? If people want to connect with the locals, what's the best way to do that in Savannah?
I would say, this sounds odd, but even if you're not religious, I would go to a church, because I think most people go to churches, and there's always a flow of visitors in the churches, especially the downtown ones. They expect to see visitors. Also, I would just sit in a square. The historic district is organized in squares, and there are benches. And if you go to a square that's more in a residential area, and if you just sit on a bench, you're going to see locals come out with their dogs and a cocktail maybe, and they may just start talking to you.
The dogs and a cocktail. Okay, that's a little different look than I'm used to. But
yeah.
And if I had a couple extra days, what would you add on to your itinerary?
I would drive over to Hilton Head, because that's completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, I would drive over there. It's a beautiful drive between Savannah and Hilton Head. It's a little dangerous because there's people on bikes and it's a 2-lane road, but it's a beautiful drive. And Hilton Head is just so different. It's organized in those planned communities, and the landscaping is always impeccable, but the beaches are great. Yeah, the beaches are much more fancy. Tybee they call it the Redneck Riviera.
That's my impression, is if you're really wanting a beach vacation, you'd fly into the same airport, but you'd head to Hilton Head instead. If you're wanting the culture and the shopping and that, you'd go to Savannah and Tybee. Am I in the right direction there?
I think Tybee, you could vacation cheaper with a family. You could be on the beach. Okay. It would just be cheaper than Hilton Head. And there's still mini golf and ice cream shops. It's just at a lower level than in Hilton Head.
Okay.
Yeah.
It works for me.
Yeah.
Cool. What surprised you when you moved from Iowa to Savannah?
Okay, it's hot in Iowa in the summertime. It's a little bit hot, but it's just so hot for so long here. And it doesn't cool down at night. I think Iowa cools down at night. It doesn't cool down at night here. So you have to have AC. The people are friendly, though, really friendly. But as soon as I open my mouth, don't have that accent.
Now, I have never found or heard anyone ever claim that the people in Iowa were not friendly. So how is it different in Savannah?
They will call you honey no matter how old you are.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. They're just, they're kind. Yeah.
Okay. Before we get to our wrap-up questions, anything else we need to know before we book our flight to Savannah?
Yeah, I would definitely just be a sensible traveler. Pick the right season. Go ahead and line up what you're going to do every day, because some things aren't going to be open every day. And also, there's a lot of little museums that I did not mention. So I would just do your research. There's a military museum that's outstanding, and there's other things to see.
Now, if I had asked your kids when they were growing up what their favorite things to do in Savannah, what would they have added to your list?
Oh, my son loved the Railroad Museum, and I talked about that.
Yeah.
SCAD has a museum, an actual art museum that both the kids loved wandering around there. They have a fabric department and that makes wonderful installations, and the kids love that. And there's also the Telfair Museum. They love that one too. There's a children's room in there. Yeah. They love just walking downtown. There's always characters, local characters, and tourists that are doing interesting things.
All right. As we get to our wrap-up questions, you were standing in the prettiest spot in Savannah. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
I'm standing at the Forsyth Park Fountain, and I'm looking towards Bull Street with the live oaks dripping with the Spanish moss, and I can hear the fountain. And then there's antique street lights around the fountain, going down the lane to Gordon Street. Yeah.
Excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Savannah?
Well, it's just a very slow pace.
Okay.
When my parents would visit from Iowa, they would go to the grocery store and they'd come home and say, Yvonne, it's very slow. And then also what I said before, it's no matter how old you are, you're honey.
Yep.
That's great.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize Savannah in just 3 words, what 3 words would you pick?
Historic,
Okay.
charming, and varied.
Excellent. And varied. Why varied?
Because I think some tourists come here to party and have a good time. There's so many bachelorette and bachelor parties here on the weekends, a lot of weddings.
Okay.
But then I think if you want to come for concerts, like the Savannah Music Festival is quite famous, our jazz festival is famous, our film festival, or if you want to go to Tybee and then wander into Savannah for a few days, there's all kinds of travelers with different motivations that would be very happy here, I think.
Okay. Excellent. Our guest again has been Yvonne Johnson. Yvonne, thank you so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your obvious love for Savannah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Special thanks to the patrons of the show who help support Amateur Traveler financially. This is my day job now, and so I appreciate all of you who listen, and I also appreciate all of you who help support this show. If you're interested in learning more about what you get when you support the show, besides that warm and glowing feeling, go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler. I'm actually recording the beginning and the end of this show in a hotel room in Cartagena, Colombia. I probably won't talk about that on the show, but I'll be writing about it on the blog, including a couple different hotel reviews. But I've been down here, or will be down here, a total of 6 nights because I hadn't been to any new countries this year and just needed to get to someplace new. I've been enjoying Cartagena, although I understand October is the worst time to come for weather, and I can believe it. It's been hot and it's been sticky. In terms of what's coming up on the show, we have another show in the can on Majorca and another one on day trips from Manila, and several different shows scheduled to be recorded. So subscribe so you don't miss anything. And with that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.
Got to see one more cathedral. Got to sit in one more cave.